My name is Bill, and I just want to ask you guys a couple of questions that you can talk about amongst yourselves. I'm going to be talking about mindsets and the belief in the growth model of intelligence. Wow, that was different. Okay. Have you ever wondered why some students will choose challenging problems and keep working on them, while others and maintain optimism as they move forward and through their struggles, whereas other students will break down in that situation? Who's seen this? Can you share an example?
Okay, I'm Elizabeth Thorne from UCSB. I don't know if we're recording it. But I was just reminded that I had a course of math honors students last fall, and they did not react well to the IBL setup that I had for them, and they spun their wheels a lot and got really frustrated. But then they didn't, it just bothered them so much they couldn't keep working. Okay. So this was, and they were perfectly capable of doing the work.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And then next year I had another group of students who were possibly less capable, but just handled it fine.
Just handled it
Same
fine.
work.
So there may be a subtle difference there.
I'm sorry?
So there's a difference there.
Yeah, something's different about those students.
Yeah. In the 1980s, a researcher named Carol Dweck started asking about that. Why do students work towards challenges, cope with failure, maintain optimism, but others don't? Okay, not just STEM, but there is some focus in it. That intelligence can grow to meet challenges. Schoolwork has personal relevance. I know that's come up. There was conversations in JMM about relevance. We'll talk a little bit about that. And having a sense of belonging in the school. The last one is one of the key reasons why people walk out of STEM, why they don't go into it. They just don't feel like they're part of it. A number of researchers who work on it. Carol Dweck is one. She's out of Stanford. One of her graduate students, David Yeager, is now at UT. Joe Bowler works on this. Some of you may have heard of her. She's done studies in IBL mathematics in the UK and other places. But they're not me. Okay, so this isn't my work, but I learned about it many years ago, and it's been growing and developing, and I think it's really important. Because what people have found out is that adjusting this mindset, whether I can get smarter, and by challenging myself and picking harder problems, that will lead me to be smarter, versus I'm only so smart, this is how I'm good, only this good at it, and I can't proceed. That can be coaxed. You can actually help students to go one way or the other. So there's a helpless condition, which is the one side where you challenges come, failure happens, and you just kind of break down. Mastery-oriented is maintaining effective striving, where you keep going, okay? And these orientations happen even among students who start off with basically equal ability, okay? Another way to characterize this is having performance goals. And these are, I'm concerned as a student with favorable judgment, evaluation, grades, okay? The other is learning goals. I'm wanting to just increase my own competency, and the outside evaluation isn't as important. This was done on late school-age children, but there's plenty of evidence to show that adults exhibit this behavior, and as we just talked earlier, you've seen it in your own classroom. The helpless categorization and performance goals, they cite the students as they're doing this talk about they're not smart enough, their memory's not good enough, I don't solve problems well, and they also show aversion, boredom, anxiety, and they also distract away. It's like, well, I'm good at other things. I've heard that before. And in fact, this strategy can actually get you worse as you proceed. More than 60% of the students lapped into ineffective strategies. They weren't thinking well after a while. So it can be really devastating. Those who are in mastery-oriented, thinking about learning goals, didn't appear that they were failing. They maintained optimism throughout the process. And they planned strategies. They were actually into some metacognitive stuff. They were thinking hypothesis testing. I did it before, I can do it again. That's a pretty simple way to express it. And I was hoping this would be informative. Can you imagine a grade school student saying that? Actually, I kind of can. This pattern emerged in a particular study, and they induced a confusion condition on this problem. A confusion condition just meant that there was a passage the students read, or half the students read, which really it was kind of related to the problem, but not really. It was enough to sort of throw them off. And they saw the bifurcation. So the good news is that we can, as teachers, we can affect this. Performance goals, again, looking towards evaluation. They want to ensure positive evaluation, or at least avoid negative evaluation. They don't, they'd rather be called smart than dumb. Turns out neither one is a very good thing to say. Those who chose a learning goal, this is mastery-oriented, chose harder problems and displayed the behavior, positive strategies, hypothesizing what strategy might work, trying it out. The researchers oriented the students one way or the other before this started, and then the students chose from an array of problems. So again, students can be set on the path one way or another. Now this one's really interesting. In the helpless condition, effort is inversely proportional to ability. And those are really great quotes, I think. If you have to work hard at something, you're not very good at it. I know I've thought that. This ought to be easier. Why did Brian get it, but I don't? I don't understand what's going on. It must be me. On the other hand, effort actually brings forth new ability. You can learn just by exerting yourself and having a good strategy. Effort's not the only key. It's effort and effective strategy, but they do go hand in hand. And I love these quotes. When you're good at something, working hard allows you to really understand it. So the right kind of goal in mind sets the context for how you'll actually solve the problem, whether you're looking for a performance goal, which is based on evaluation, or a learning goal, which is based on developing your own skills. Okay, and this is where we get into the fixed intelligence. There's the entity theory, that intelligence is fixed. Okay? This is part of something called implicit theories, that people hold implicit theories about how smart they are, how their brain works, what they're good at, what they're not good at. They're called implicit because people rarely articulate this, but they can in certain conditions. And then there's the incremental theory, that intelligence is malleable. You can actually get smarter. Cognitive science is showing this to be true. The brain reforms, makes new connections all the time. And even after, peak time for human brain development is, or not development, not so much, but peak time for intelligence is sort of set at around 40 years old. However, you can do things to keep it going well into your late years. And I suspect math is probably one of them. So there's a causal relationship between these implicit theories. What I believe about my own state of intelligence affects my choice of whether I'm looking to show my performance, show my ability, get evaluated positively, or whether I am choosing to learn. So what you actually think about, whether you can get smarter or whether your smartness stays constant, matters, and it shows up. So here's a little bit of review. Entity implies performance goals, and if the confidence and ability is high, they tend to be mastery-oriented. Learning goals, picking on challenges, effective strategies, remaining positive. But if their confidence was low, they go into the helpless condition and deteriorate, break down, anxiety. On the other hand, an incremental implicit theory that intelligence can grow, doesn't really matter what your confidence in your own ability is, it always leads into mastery-oriented and better problem solving. So, we sort of asked earlier, how does this resonate with your experience? And the point of this talk was to see how this relates to IBL. Because, and I don't know the answer. This research was done in a lot grade school, but some adults. There's some high school. There's also work in college. We'll get to that in just a second. And it's a little bit agnostic towards the style of curriculum or the style of teaching, although it emerged out of, our traditional setting, not an IBL classroom. And it seems to me that if IBL is done well, that these things will be inherent in the process as the students discover that they can actually solve a math problem they never thought they could. That might be changing their implicit theory on whether they can get smarter or not. And there have been some interventions recently that have shown great promise. 1,500 high school students read an online article about cognitive science, neuroscience actually, about how the brain can grow and make new connections. And the lowest percentage, the lowest tertile of the class stopped failing. They stopped getting D's and they moved up and started getting A's, B's, and C's. This is over the course of one semester, 1,500 graduate students, by taking 30 minutes to read an article and write about it. 886 community college students, same sort of thing. This was specifically a math course, but a 12% increase in getting A's, B's, and C's. So small interventions, not expensive, not that hard to do. You got to be careful about what they actually read, but it can make a huge big deal. This is more recent. 250,000 Khan Academy students read a very simple message. When you learn a new kind of math problem, you grow your math brain. That was it. 3% increase in the number of concepts mastered. 3 seems small, but out of 250,000, that's pretty big. And for one sentence that shows up when they log in. The other sentence was, some of the problems are hard, just do your best. And they didn't change. So they're back relying on their own states. So that was really exciting to me when I heard about this. Like, wow, that's subtle. And we can probably do this. Okay. So that's about mindset, fixed versus growth intelligence, and that there's ways to influence your students in a positive way, that they can believe that they can get smarter. And if they hold to that belief, they're more likely to remain optimistic as they work through challenges. They don't break down in the face of failure and are willing to do hard things. Okay? So, relevance. I've heard this a lot. How do we make math relevant to our students? This is coming up. There was the study I cite is Holloman, 2009. And there's a couple simple questions you can ask. You don't have to make it relevant for them. They can make it relevant for themselves. And it's just how you phrase it. How can learning this material allow me to help another person? And you have them write it down and explain it. Maybe they're thinking about their little brother or sister. Maybe they're thinking about a friend in their class. Maybe they're thinking about their parent. Who knows? Doesn't really matter. But have them write it down. Another phrase, how can learning this material allow me to help other people? A slightly different perspective. Maybe they don't have a particular individual in mind, but maybe they're thinking about the public, their school at large, unknown opportunities to be of service. And we're really running short, but this is where the active part of the program comes in, where you guys write it down. So what I'm going to ask you is just jot down these questions and be thinking about them as you go on. How can understanding implicit theories, how can understanding this stuff about growth mindset, how can that allow you to help other people? Possibly your students, maybe your colleagues, who knows? I thought that was really cool because you've probably seen a number of problems where they do real world problems. I never liked that phrase, but it's okay. that means the school is a fake world, right? And trying to make it relevant, and it so often doesn't work. What's relevant to student A is irrelevant to student B. It happens all the time. And just to put it in their hands. It's like, well, what do you think? How can you make this important to you? They will create that answer. But to do it, they should answer this question at length repeatedly. So it's not just first of the class, you do it throughout the term. And have them explain it. Who is their audience? What's the material about? And how they can use it to be of service to another person. And it sounds like that might be a good assessment. Belonging. This one's trickier. What does it create? What does it mean to have a sense of belonging in a community? This study, Walton and Cohen, was done on freshmen at a university. They were focused mostly on African American students. And this one, it's more subtle. You can actually generate a problem. Someone who feels perfectly at home can start talking about belonging, and now I have questions. Is this something I need to worry about? So to answer this one, there is some insight. One is that struggles with belonging are not unique to me. Everybody deals with it, and it doesn't have anything to do with the color of my skin or my age, and this was freshmen. I may feel like I don't belong, and I may associate to the fact that I'm a redhead, but it turns out every single person around you is doing this too, so that helps diffuse it. And in this paper, they show that actually really helps. But what I want to do is turn to Francis Sue to help in this notion of belonging, and that's belonging through the gift of grace. I don't know if you've read Lesson of Grace in Teaching. He reported on it at JMM, and it was really quite beautiful. Accomplishments are not what make you a worthy person. Good things you didn't earn or deserve, but you're getting them anyway. Okay, and I think this really speaks to the mindset as well, that if I do this problem right, you'll think I'm smart, you'll think I'm worthy, and I'll belong, which is not a good way to go. But if you just believe, is a teacher looking to me, that I'm worthy, period, then I might be willing to take more risk and try something that I don't know how to do. Another good quote, think of that teacher who you knew was always busy but still made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. You got one of those? And it's incredible, right? I've had experiences like that where I didn't do anything, I don't deserve this, but here you are doing it anyway, and it's wonderful. Achievement in its rightful place is not where we should derive our ultimate sense of identity and self-worth. And we need to have a healthy separation between achievement and worthiness. So I've shifted to grace because, and these ideas, because it's something a little more personal, something you could bring more directly into your classroom without getting into the riskiness of belonging interventions. But I thought it was important to know that people are thinking about these things. It's gaining a lot of traction. Some terms are non-cognitive learning, affective behavioral. Big universities are paying attention to it. UT is paying attention to it. They're doing a freshman intervention even as we speak. So, and I wanted to put these ideas out there because I really feel like they're just already interwoven in IBL, and that we can, by awareness of it, we can help make our practice better. What's next? So my interpretation of this, there's a lot going on, and it's a long story. I really encourage you to read the papers. I can send out the references if you're interested. This is a very, very brief introduction. The papers are not typically short, and they're pretty dense, but it's a good read. So if this interests you, I highly recommend it. But the helpless side basically relates to, I'm not good enough. And I know what that feels like. I felt it just 30 minutes ago. And therefore, I don't belong. And the other side of it, it's not about me. So this diffuses everything. And I think that's a truth that we can all take home everywhere. Even when I think it's about me, it's not really about me. So that's the introduction to mindsets, belonging, relevance. I hope you enjoyed it. There's some of the references. I'm happy to share that with you. It's worth checking out. Okay, so any questions?
Speaker.
Lee Mahavier Peterman, high school math teacher. I'm curious about did you find the link between the cultural attitudes and beliefs about intelligence? There's a great deal of research and literature on this topic, and it's certainly something I've seen in my experience. To say it briefly, American students have a cultural mindset of fixed intelligence. If I don't get an instant answer, then I'm dumb, and furthermore, it's not possible. Many of the Latinos, in my experience, are lazy, don't want to work, and they find that social things are much more valued, so they want to help each other. They want to work in groups. They don't want to do anything alone. Whereas the Asian cultural mindset is that hard work is valued, and everyone can achieve equally with hard work, and if you're not achieving, it's because you're not working hard enough. And in my experience, to answer a question you asked a few slides ago, the IBL big difference is that the Americans and somewhat the Latinos, to overcome these hurdles takes a much longer time. It's just a much slower start than the Asians, who just start off with the hard work attitude. So my question for you is, did you not find this link? I was puzzled that you didn't mention the cultural link at all.
That's a really good question. I did see it, and I left it out because it's too big, and I had 30 minutes. And another reason I left it out was that even though I agree with your categorizations, even though they're stereotypes, they're there.
Aren't the stereotypes because I was not right?
Oh, no, that's great. That's fine. And it's true.
I think that they're true.
Oh, yeah. I agree. And I left it out because what the research is showing is that those don't necessarily matter. They can change, and we can do things that aren't so heavy-handed to change them. And it's not too late. You can adopt this at 5 years old, 15, 25, 40. That anyone can make that shift, and making the shift has nothing to do with your ethnicity, where you were born, where you live. But yeah, those cultural factors are huge.
Okay, Elizabeth Thoren from UCSB. I was just wanted to follow up on, I sort of muttered about my bad class and my good class, and bad being they gave up and the good class didn't. And in between, I changed the way I approached the class. And the very first day of my classes now, I'm asking my students to share something that they had to work hard to get good at. And then on the very first day, I'm saying, you're going to have to work hard to get good at this. And so I'm thinking, this idea came from Brian Katz, and he recognized one of the papers that you listed. So I'm thinking it's no accident that this idea came to me, and I think it's made a big difference.
Awesome, thank you. And there's one way to go. You're going to have to work hard to get good at it. And I like the sharing piece too.
Mike Agliardo, just quick question. You mentioned there's that 30-minute online intervention video. Is that publicly available, or was?
It might be.
Okay.
It might be. Let's chat afterwards. I can look in the paper and see what it is. Unfortunately, a lot of times they'll talk about the intervention they'll use and they'll describe it, but they won't share it. And maybe you can find it, but we'll see. Sure. Anything else? All right. Well, thanks for your patience. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, speaker.